Welcome to this edition of Head to Head. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and this is episode number 343 of the podcast. And on this episode, I'm talking about the Boston Red Sox trading for starting pitcher Garret Crochet. For the last few years, the biggest, and I mean biggest criticism of the Boston Red Sox has been that they no longer act like the Boston Red Sox, which is why so many are ecstatic towards their first big move of this offseason, trading for White Sox starting pitcher Garret Crochet. The lefty had the 7th most strikeouts in the majors last year with 207. This is the Red Sox making a signature Red Sox type move. And why do I say that? Because as a fan of this team, this franchise has a rich history of trading for ace level starting pitchers. The first major one and most significant was when the Red Sox in 1998 traded for then Expos pitcher Pedro Martinez, who's during his time in Boston won 2 Cy Young Awards and had inarguably 2 of the best seasons a pitcher has ever had in 1999, where he had 311 strikeouts, and 2000, where he had 284 strikeouts. The franchise's next big move for a star pitcher would come in 2006 when the Red Sox made a trade with the Marlins for Josh Beckett, who I know some Red Sox fans have mixed feelings towards, but for me, he's one of the best big game pitchers I've ever seen, and he proved it in 2007, where during the regular season he had a 20-7 record. It's a year in which I think he should have won a Cy Young Award. This next pitcher might not have the same stature as the previous 2 I've mentioned, but in 2014, the Red Sox made a trade with the Tigers for Rick Porcello, who in 2016 won the Cy Young Award with a 22-4 record, and the last time the Red Sox made a big trade for a pitcher before Crochet was also with the Chicago White Sox, getting Chris Sale, who had a number of injuries with the team, and he's sometimes talked about as a what could have been. That being said, in his first year with the team in 2017, Sale went 17-8 with 308 strikeouts. What do these 4 pitchers, Pedro Martinez, Josh Beckett, Rick Porcello, and Chris Sale, have in common, other than playing for the Boston Red Sox? It's the fact that all 4 of them won a World Series title during their time in Boston. Pedro, of course, won in 2004, breaking the curse. Beckett won in 2007 with the team I still view as the best baseball team I've ever seen. And Porcello and Sale both won in 2018 when the team won a franchise record 108 regular season ball games. The Red Sox historically have made these kind of trades during turning points for the franchise when they are ready to win. That's why this Crochet trade is very encouraging for me. I don't know if Garret Crochet is going to be as good as these pitchers, but it has me thinking that the Red Sox believe that they are a Garret Crochet away from being a very good baseball team. And that hasn't been something I could say over these last few years, because they haven't made a lot of moves like this to get an already established pitcher who could improve. That's something that all of these pitchers did when they came to the Red Sox. They had their best seasons as members of the Red Sox. They elevated their game. They were already established pitchers. I mean, Josh Beckett was a World Series hero for the Marlins back in 2003. Pedro was already a Cy Young Award winner, but they still got better with the Red Sox. Chris Sale had his best season with the Red Sox. Rick Porcello had his best year with the Red Sox. They got these pitchers at the exact right moment, and they're hoping lightning strikes again with Garret Crochet. Why the Red Sox in the past have made these trades is because they have had some issues with developing young starting pitchers, and they are far from the only team with that problem. Before Tanner Houck last year, the 2 homegrown pitchers that panned out last were John Lester and Clay Buchholz. And developing young arms isn't just a Red Sox problem. You saw it from the Chicago Cubs recently. They developed Chris Bryant Anthony Rizzo, but then they had to go out and trade for a John Lester, bring in a John Lackey before they were able to win the World Series. I mean, they did not have homegrown starting pitching when they won the World Series in 2016. The Astros had to go out and trade for Justin Verlander. I think these teams that are winning World Series are not necessarily developing young starting pitching because it's really hard to do. So they go out to these organizations like the Chicago White Sox who are really struggling and they take their aces away from them. That's what big market teams are supposed to do, and I'm glad that that is once again what the Boston Red Sox are doing. Take advantage of these teams who can no longer afford these type of arms. I know there are fans of the Red Sox who wanted and still want Corbin Burnes. The team has had less success with signing big-name starting pitchers. John Lackey and David Price had up and down moments with the team. One of the upsides of this moves for the Red Sox is they can wait and see if Crochet establishes himself as elite before they give him a big payday. He's not walking in with a $200 million contract. I love the idea of wait and see to pay him. I mean, let him prove himself to be the ace of your pitching staff and the missing piece of a winning team before you pay him the money. Yes, the Yankees going out and giving Max Fried a lot of money is something I agree with, but I also just love the idea of what the Red Sox have done over the years. Trade for these pitchers and then pay them after they've established that they are an ace pitcher for the pitching staff. I also just think that the Red Sox had to go down this path of trading for an elite starting pitcher because let's be honest here for a minute. The Red Sox right now are not a destination. Yes, they were in the hunt for Juan Soto. They offered him $700 million, but we all knew that Juan Soto was not going to join the Red Sox. Then they were in on Max Fried, and it was reported that they were not willing to spend that kind of money on him, so he went to the Yankees. I would be shocked if the Red Sox ended up with Corbin Burnes. I think Corbin Burnes is going to end up with more money than Max Fried. I mean, Corbin Burnes is just waiting to get that big contract, and I don't think it's coming from the Red Sox. I mean, I know Red Sox fans don't want to hear this, but I also think that the team is banking on Brian Bayo to continue to develop into something special. I mean, last offseason, they ended up paying him. He had an up and down season last year. There were some moments of really good, and there were other moments of really bad. But that's what you expect from a young pitcher. I believe in him somewhat. Like, I think he could be a number 3 starter. I like the idea of a 1-2-3 of Garret Crochet, Tanner Houck, and Brian Bayo. I mean, that could be pretty decent. I mean, that could be 3 guys who can consistently win you 10 to 15 ball games a year. And in modern baseball, that's all you need. I don't care who the number 4 starter is. I don't care who the number 5 starter is. Those are going to be interchangeable from year to year. But if you, for the next 5 to 10 years, can have Garret Crochet, Tanner Houck, and Brian Bayo, if Bayo is ever as good as people have said he could be, then you could have something special. After Crochet, the next big move for the Red Sox should be to bring in a bat. I mean, you just lost Tyler O'Neill, a player I didn't love, but the guy did end up hitting 30 home runs for you. You're going to have to replace that power in the lineup. Your offense can no longer just revolve around Rafael Devers and Jared Duran. Like, it has to go above those two at some point. Maybe you're going to be in the running for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. next offseason, but if you really want to improve this season and win more ball games, Garret Crochet is a good start, but I think the next big move has to bring in a power bat. Maybe if it's a shorter term deal, you bring in Teoscar Hernandez or you bring in Anthony Santander. I mean, you need to have power in that lineup because right now there's not a lot of bats that people are fearing in the Red Sox lineup. And they could even take a downturn with the loss of Tyler O'Neill if you don't find the proper replacement. What excites me about the Garret Crochet trade is that I look at it as the beginning of something. It's not the ending, and I don't believe that the organization views it as the final move. They can't look at it and go, wow, we have Willer Abreu, we have Rafael Devers. These guys are going to take that next step. Garret Crochet is going to be the final piece. They're not that good to have that mindset. It is the beginning move. I believe there are more moves coming. I mean, back when they got Pedro Martinez a few years later, they made the big signing to get Manny Ramirez. And then after that, they got a few guys out of nowhere like David Ortiz. As great as those pitchers I talked about earlier are, Pedro Martinez, Josh Beckett, Chris Sale, they walked into Red Sox teams that had already had established themselves as a great core. I mean, Josh Beckett was added to a team that was just having Jonathan Papelbon, Kevin Youkilis, Mike Lowell came in the Josh Beckett trade as well. And then over the next few years, they developed Jacoby Ellsbury, Dustin Pedroia, and then that team became so good after that. That's what has to happen to this team. You're hoping that Garret Crochet hits, and then all of these young players develop and grow into superstar players themselves. I think the feeling amongst Red Sox fans is probably that they need to take advantage of this moment because the Orioles are likely to lose Corbin Burnes, and the Yankees just lost out on Juan Soto, so they want their team to be uber aggressive. My take would be, it's not all about next season. It's about the Red Sox becoming more consistent once again, so year in and year out they can compete. I don't want a season like 2021 where they make it to the ALCS and then over the next few years they finish in last place. I just want more consistency from this organization, and that's something I've always wanted from the Boston Red Sox. I want to be able to watch them year in and year out and go, wow, this team is really going for it. Now, I know there are going to be some years where you're going to miss the playoffs, you're not going to win 95 games, it's not going to come all together. But you have to have some moments, and you have to be entertaining all of the time. And I think over the last few years, the Red Sox have not always put on an entertaining product. Getting Garret Crochet is evidence that they want to be more entertaining. Here's a guy who's going to strike out 200 batters. You're going to want to watch him take the ball every fifth day. Watching the Red Sox, you clearly felt that absence of an ace pitcher. I mean, yes, Tanner Houck really evolved. He had an all-star type season, but by the end of the year, you felt like, yeah, this guy probably shouldn't be a number one starting pitcher moving forward. I want him to be a part of my future. I want him to be the number 2 to Garret Crochet, but I think this team needed an ace. It also didn't help that the one you traded away, Chris Sale, immediately won a Cy Young Award with his new team, the Atlanta Braves. Yes, there's no way of knowing if Chris Sale would have had that same type of success if he were still on the Red Sox. Still, it hurts to see him have that kind of season with his new team because that's something that you missed out on, and you used to have that guy, and he once upon a time had a season like that for you. My mindset on starting pitchers is I don't think 5-man rotations matter anymore. Who your number 4 and number 5 starters, I could care less about. What does matter is who is your number 1. Who's that guy you're going to have that you can rely on to win a big game in a big series against your rival. The Yankees have had that over the last few years with Garrett Cole. The Orioles had it last season with Corbin Burnes. The Tigers were a Cinderella story last season because of Tariq Skubal and his Cy Young season. I mean, that's the type of difference an ace-level pitcher can make to a pitching staff. Every Red Sox team that has ever mattered had that ace-level pitcher, and it's wait and see if Garret Crochet becomes that, but that's what you're after. You're after an ace like Roger Clemens or Pedro Martinez. How I'm going to rate this move is if by 5 years from now Max Fried is a better pitcher for the New York Yankees than Garret Crochet is for the Boston Red Sox, then this move clearly didn't work out because Crochet is 5 years younger than Max Fried. Max Fried has had some health issues in the past. I love Max Fried as a pitcher, but the Yankees giving him 8-year contract, that's a risky move. Garret Crochet better be better than Max Fried over the next 5 seasons or the Red Sox pick the wrong guy. That's another thing about this trade. There are huge expectations about this move because of the history of these other moves. All those other trades panned out. Pedro Martinez worked out. Josh Beckett worked out, Rick Porcello worked out, and Chris Sale definitely worked out. So Red Sox fans like myself are expecting Garret Crochet to pitch to that kind of level of pitcher. I mean, maybe he's not going to be Pedro Martinez, but I hope he's somewhere in between Pedro and, let's say, Rick Porcello. This guy needs to be the clear number one of the pitching staff right away. Unless you go out and you get a Corbin Burnes, which I'm not expecting you to do. I am expecting this move to really work out because this guy is after that big payday. I mean, Garret Crochet is 25 years old. He wanted an extension if he were traded to a team last trade deadline. He said, if you trade for me and want me to pitch in the postseason, you need to give me a contract extension. So this is clearly a guy who wants the big payday. He's also a guy who pitched very well last year on the worst team in the history of baseball. I mean, the White Sox lost a record number of games. Now he's walking into a much better situation. But I will say this, and I hate to play this card, but I will. How is Garret Crochet going to react to pitching in a big market? Because there have been some starting pitchers who have not reacted so well to pitching in Boston. I don't think at first John Lackey reacted well to Boston. David Price did not react well to Boston. Garrett Richards a few years ago did not react well to Boston. And it's not just about the fan base, it's also about the media, because the media is going to follow this guy and write about whether or not he lives up to the hype of this trade, because the expectations are that he's going to become the ace of the staff, that he's going to become a guy who could win a Cy Young in the next few years, that he's going to be a perennial all-star pitcher, and if he's not, they're going to be very loud about it. And fair or not fair, this guy is going to be compared to Chris Sale, because Chris Sale, like Crochet, was a lefty who the Red Sox traded for from the Chicago White Sox, and Sale ended up having great early success with the team. Now, if Garret Crochet does not have that same great success early on, people are going to say, oh, what went wrong with this move? Why isn't this guy Chris Sale? That's how people are labeling this trade. They are saying, once again, the Red Sox are poaching away a great young pitcher from the Chicago White Sox. It's fair noting that Chris Sale was walking into a way better situation. I mean, at that time, the Red Sox had David Price, who was very good. They also had great positional players in Mookie Betts, Xander Bogaerts, Rafael Devers. I mean, that team was ready to win right away. This team, you don't really know what you have. Wilyer Abreu won a Gold Glove. I'm not sure if he's a long-term part of the future. Tristan Casas, I don't really know how to feel about him anymore. Is the team looking to trade him away? There's real promise in a guy like Cedar Rafaela, but I really don't know how good of an offensive player that guy can become. And you also have to wonder if Jarren Duran can even duplicate the season he just had. There are question marks on this team that were not there in 2017 when they traded for Chris Sale. Thus, it's not fair to compare the two trades, but we're going to, because it's Red Sox fans and it's our history that we have with this team. In the end, I'm just not surprised that the Red Sox were more willing to make a move like this to get a 25-year-old lefty than to sign Max Fried, who's 30 years old. I think the Red Sox want absolutely nothing to do with signing 30-year-old players to 5, 7, 8-year contracts. They just don't want to give 30-year-olds long-term deals. And who can blame them? I think they were in on Juan Soto because he's young. They're in on Garret Crochet because he's young. Corbin Burnes wants an 8 to 10-year deal. He's 30 years old, and I don't think the Red Sox want to come anywhere near those kind of years for a pitcher entering his 30s. They don't want to do it. I think that's why they weren't willing to pay up for Max Fried, and it's the same reason why they're not going to pay up for Corbin Burnes. So you're left with Garret Crochet and the promise of a 25-year-old 20-year-old who can get a lot better. The problem is he doesn't have the same history of those other guys, so you really don't know what you're going to get out of Garret Crochet if he's pitching in a playoff race, because Max Fried has been on a team that's won the World Series. Corbin Burns has been on numerous teams that have made the playoffs. You don't know how Garret Crochet is going to react now that he's playing in a baseball market that's trying to win a lot of baseball games. It's just a different reality than the one that he had in Chicago. There's not going to be patience when it comes to Garret Crochet and the Red Sox in general. I mean, fans want the team to win right now because they're sick of the middling. They're sick of being in the middle with teams like the Rays and the Blue Jays. They want to compete with the Yankees. They want to compete with the Orioles, who have so much young talent, but now they lack starting pitching. So if you look at the Red Sox now, they have a pitcher in Garret Crochet that's better than anyone on the Baltimore Orioles pitching staff, and that is a very good sign for the Red Sox moving forward, especially if Garret Crochet becomes the ace that so many expect him to become. Every day Pedro Martinez pitched, they called it Pedro Day. Every day Chris Sale pitched, they called it Sale Day. Hopefully Garret Crochet becomes so good that we start calling it Crochet Day every fifth game he takes the ball. Thanks for listening to this edition of Head to Head. I'm Cam McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Monday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So please rate, review, and subscribe.